So a couple of things. One, we really do not buy off the MLS. 99% of the properties we purchase are off market. So we have a system in place where we market to off market sellers, and we mostly text message and cold call, some marketing online that we have people reach out. And then we do have some bandit signs out in some in front of our properties that we get calls off as well. But the majority of our stuff is off market. So when we buy it.
Yo, what is up? This is Christian D. Evans, host of Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. And I just want to share with you real quick, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It really means a lot to us, but also our community. And, if you like this, please share this with your friend, your family, a colleague, someone that you don't even like. Definitely share that with them. And then also leave a comment and a review for us. We really do appreciate that. And show our guests some love if you find that this episode really resonates with you. Secondly, also want to share with you some really awesome news. I've had the Fortune Opportunity Network and have incredible guests, 8 and 9 figure entrepreneurs, CEOs, and founders on our podcast. And what we've done is we've actually been able to open up a Be Uncommon If You Can Mastermind, where we're able to open up the door for so many of you, right? Those that are 6-figure, 7-figure entrepreneurs that are scaling, that are struggling, that really want to level up their game, their business, their life, whatever it is. I'm able to open up that door for you with this Be Uncommon If You Can Mastermind. Now, we're only taking a select few of individuals. So what you'll need to do is go to christiandeevans.com/mastermind-now. And the link is actually in the description as well. Guys, that is christiandeevans.com/mastermind-now. We're only opening this up for a select few of individuals that really want to level up their game. You have a conversation with me, see if you qualify. And guys, enjoy the episode. And remember, be uncommon if you can. Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning in to Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, Christian D. Evans. And guys, we have someone very special, right? Once you actually have been able to achieve incredible success, it's not about that anymore. It's about going out there and giving back at a very high level. And it's significance, right? John Maxwell talks about this all the time. Success is, hey, look, I'm at the top of the mountain. Significance is, hey, how many people can I help bring to the top of the mountain? The reason why I wanted to have this guy on is because, yes, he's been able to create a massive fortune, massive amount of assets under management, massive real estate empire. But also it's his drive to be able to do something bigger with his resources and the things that he's been blessed with. And he's just a very humble man. He's a full-time husband, real estate investor, and father of 4. He has hated his job and his boss and was a production manager at a plant. He decided to make a change and started learning about real estate. He was broke, so he had to figure out how to do it with no money. He started wholesaling, and his first year, he did 36 deals and made $300,000. So he's obviously pretty good, but that came with obviously certain ups and downs. He did all this with a full-time job with a wife and 4 kids. After that, he started to become an authority in his area, and he grew personally. He grew. People realized he was not some fly-by-night person and helped make a name for himself. He started using his private investors to fund deals for him to take down his rentals and flips. He has been able to accumulate almost $11 million in assets in 3 years, and he was working 9 to 5 and had to find a way out. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend, Sean O'Rourke. How you doing, Sean?
Good, man. Good. I appreciate you having me on. It's exciting.
Hey, man, I'm really excited because, what I find so interesting about your story is, I always think there's 2 different types of people. There's excuse people, excuse makers, and solution seekers. And, Sean, all those things that, hey, I got a 9 to 5, I got kids, I can't do it because of what, right? And the reality is you basically overcame all those objections just by living your life and actually doing it. And let's just kind of dive into that. First of all, why did you not make that an excuse in your life?
Yeah. I think there was a couple of dynamics, I was okay for a long time working 2 jobs, a plant manager, a production manager, and then I would hustle on the side and do side things, and make a little extra money. And for a while I was okay with that. But what I realized was I was miserable in my job. So I asked myself initially, I said, what am I doing? What's life really about? And why am I here? Why I'm okay with working all the time and not getting to where I really wanted to be. And so that was the first driver, was I had to do something else to make myself happy. Or I thought I did. I thought it was to make myself happy, but what I did is I started going after something that I knew in the back of my mind, because when I was a kid, my father was a regional sales rep for a company, and he traveled to 7 or 8 different states, and he would coach high level people on how to sell their business, how to set up their sales force, how to structure all that. And so those guys that had $1 million businesses back then, I would ask them questions, how can I ever be like you? And the thing that they always said to me was, you have to work for yourself. You can't work for somebody else. And that stuck in the back of my mind. But you forget those things when you're young. You kind of forget that, but subliminally it was there. So that's the second thing. And so at one point, I just made a decision. I said, I've got to do something different. I've been working 2 jobs anyway. Dump one of them, okay, and focus on something that's making me happy, that I'm enjoying, and just keep driving on. And what I realized was, holy crap, you can actually make a lot of money in real estate.
I love that story. And what is so interesting to me, Sean, is that you were blessed with an amazing network, but you didn't just like take that for granted. You were asking questions. You learned from them. Though, let me ask you, Sean, because I think many of us are born, some of us are born in really good networks. What made you different? Why did you decide to take advantage of that, ask questions? And like you said, you didn't take advantage of it for a while, right? Actually, implement those strategies, but you were asking those questions, and like you said, it was held in that subconscious side of the brain. So I'd love to ask you, where do you think that drive came from? That why do you think that was?
Man, it started well. So from the beginning, what happened was it started from the guys that were driving the 12 valve Mercedes, the V12 Mercedes and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. So really initially it came from aspirations, from something monetary, wanting something different. My father died when I was 17. So literally after that, my life went spiraling down for a long time, because he was my rock, and but honestly, it was more geared towards, and we get it a little bit differently now than we did when I was that age, because now we have social media. We can look at influencers that are driving Lambos and all that crazy stuff, right? In all honesty, if that's something that you aspire for, great, go after it. But not only just don't go after it, reach out to those people and make an initiative. If it's something that you want, and this is something that I learned, and this is really what comes down to the answer to your question. If there's something in life that you want, go after it and don't stop. So I wanted to ask questions because I wanted to know how they got to where they were, what they got, how did they get what they've gotten. And the only way I knew how to figure that out is to ask them, because I could. But it's the same thing. When I decided that I wanted to start learning real estate, I found out that there was a guy here in Mississippi, so I could connect with him. And he was a real estate guy, and he's doing a bunch of social media stuff. I contacted him on social media. It's like, hey, man, I really would love to learn some stuff from you. I don't really have anything to give right now, but I'll do whatever. He didn't respond back. I did it again. And finally, I found his address and I skip traced him and I called him. It's because he had something that I wanted, that knowledge. And so I just went after it.
I love that. I love that. And I love being, because you were very resourceful, right? I've been really focused in the last few years, 4 or 5 years of being resourceful and changing that mindset and just finding a way, figuring that out. I just think that's awesome. Skip tracing, I've never heard that. I think that's brilliant as an idea. Now, let me ask you this. So you've been able to acquire, $11 million in assets in 3 years. Now, just from being in the real estate industry, it's very interesting, because I think we all hear about the beginner side of things, right? Which is like, hey, find deals, how to do it, how to process, and a lot of those skills you have to acquire, right? Which is, sales skills, how to talk, negotiation processes, skills on how to look at a property and the metrics, the numbers, right? And make sure that all works. That's a lot of beginner stuff. But once you get in the intermediate, there's different ways to really scale that empire. And obviously you figure out a way. So I'd love to talk a little bit more like, intelligent at a deeper level. What are some tips and tricks that you've identified, leveraging other investors, building in a community, building an audience, that really helped you take your life and business to the next level?
Yeah. There's one big one, that's surrounding yourself with like-minded people that are more intelligent, that know more than you in an area that you need to grow and learn in. And if that means that you have to pay to be in that room with that kind of person, then you should do it. And because you're only going to grow and gain knowledge, but then you're also going to accelerate. The second thing is, if you can partner up with people in your community, in your area, around the country, whatever that case may be, that have skill set or things, whether that be money or time or whatever that you don't have, I fully think that as long as you're like-minded as a partner up with somebody that you can grow them and they can grow you. I actually did that. So I've got 2 business partners right now. And they have abilities and skill sets that I don't have, and I have abilities and skill sets that they don't, and we all kind of go together. And we're all growing. And so, what we do, just to kind of get an idea of how the business model works now, we've built a network of people that have 401ks that have been sitting there, that have converted them over to a self-directed IRA. They have, liquidity and cash flow, or liquidity, and with inflation the way it is, with throughout the years, with interest rates being low and not being able to make enough money through letting it sit in the bank, we've built that network of people where we could generate funds to then take those funds and buy rental property, multifamily property, flip houses with their cash, give them an absolute solid return on their investment. Also, we would sign a promissory note guaranteeing that Sean O'Rourke and my business partners are going to pay you back. And if we don't, then then whatever. But, so we give them basically a secured platform to make really good interest returns on their investment. And the one thing that we've always said is you care about the investors more than you care about anything else. So even if we don't make money, but the investor makes money, that's more important than anything, because as you build these relationships, and that's really what that is, building these relationships, that escalates you, because they're going to say, well, dang, I made X amount here. They really didn't make anything. That shows, credibility and honor and whatever. And then, okay, well, I'm going to loan them more money. I'm willing to loan them more and more, and then it just grows to where then what you have is you have credibility in the market, so that when you tell somebody that you're going to pay cash for a $2 million apartment complex, they know you're not pulling smoke or blowing smoke,
So let me ask you this, because a lot of our listeners are, they're several $1 million business owners, right? $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and they want to obviously scale to 8 figures. And what I've noticed is, just from being a business owner, your attention, you only have X amount of attention, right? Attention to focus on certain things, right?
Yeah.
And I do know that in order to get into another field that may not even be relevant to what you're doing, it takes a lot of attention, energy, and effort on the front end, right? And so we always have to have that right expectation that the learning curve is going to be exponential. So my question is, for our audience, what would you recommend? Let's say they have some resources, they have some capital there, they're sitting cash, right? Would you recommend learning and educating and figuring it out themselves? Or would you recommend, hey, you know what? Connect up with yourself, Sean, be a partner, build a network, build a connection with you, and then obviously leverage some of their resources to obviously get partnership and deals. To me, I think it's the latter, but I just love to get your response.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's going to be a personal question on what you can really endure and what you want to deal with. Because as entrepreneurs, sometimes we're willing to take on more than we really need to be, because we should be spending that time in other places, right? But I agree with you. If somebody is a good operator, and that's key, right? Knowing that the individual that you're willing to invest in is a good operator that has a good track record. If you can figure that out and know that, I commit. I also take my own cash and invest it with other people that are doing other things, because I can't manage. I mean, I've got a full plate, so I'm doing the exact same thing. The liquidity that I have, if I don't have it in another business or something that's going on, I'm pumping it to somebody else that's a good operator that can give me a good return on my investment, whether that be 12 to 16% interest annually.
Yeah, and so let me ask you this, because see, acquiring $11 million in assets, that's pretty tough. So though I do know from being able to scale a business, you really have to get niche specific and get really good maybe at one or two things, and then have your whole system running off of those two things, right? And that's what I've discovered, and what I've noticed from just talking to a lot of real estate business owners. They either focus on the big deals, right, and they're
Mm-hmm.
specific, this is what I'm looking for, or they focus on like the small fourplex, sixplex, but they're like machines at four, sixplex, or they focus on that like single family. But whichever one, they just focus on one or two of those avenues and really just dialed in. And even within obviously like single family, you can find pre-foreclosure, sheriff's houses, all there's just different, tremendous different processes and systems to be able to acquire
Sure.
a house. So
Sure.
my question, Sean, is what is your strategy when you're looking at a property? Is it more of, hey, you know what, we're looking at, 50, 70, 100, 300 units, and then that's where we come in, be able to leverage a lot of capital and rock and roll? Or is it kind of smaller incremental ones is where you're like, hey, this is my bread and butter? What does that look like?
Man, I love that question. And so I think I'm a little bit different than probably anybody that I talk to, because I agree with you. A lot of people niche in one certain area. But the benefit to having partnerships are I can focus on one area and my business partners can focus on other areas. So we actually have two divisions. We have simple home exits, the single family side, where we buy single family flips, and we also do a lot of wholesales, and we sell a lot to institutional buyers. Okay. And that's in multiple different states. And then we have simple home exits, the commercial side. And on the commercial side, we focus in on mobile home parks, mini storages, apartment complexes, and commercial buildings, commercial rental spaces. So, so I focus on the single family and drive single family packages, portfolios, and single family one-offs. And then my business partners focus on the multifamily and the commercial side. And so it's kind of our business handles all aspects of real estate. One thing that I realized when I first got into wholesaling was I don't like being put in a box, because every real estate transaction does not fit in a box. So I like to kick that sucker down the road and really just be outside that box and open to opportunity.
That makes perfect sense. So when you're, and I think that's a really awesome, because you structured your business where you have, hey, your focus is 100% on this, and you've got other people that are delegating, and then at a different level as well, which I think that's awesome. So when you're let's kind of dial into your niche, okay, or your kind of process, if you will, okay.
Yeah.
When you're looking at a deal, I do know that there are certain numbers, metrics, stuff like that. I am curious, like, what are certain strategies that really helped you scale? Like, for example, I do know that from being in the real estate just a little bit, is there are certain ways to obviously acquire properties with very little. And there's a lot of books about that. However, though, there's an assumption that, hey, put nothing down, but then obviously your equity is very little as well.
Mm.
So there's like, it's a 1-2 catch, right? Would you rather have equity and put a little bit more down, 20, 30, 40%, and you have much more equity that you can then pull out tax advantage, maybe
Mm.
6, 8, 12, 18 months down the road, pull that out. And then of course, use that as tax-free to really scale your business. What does that look like? What are certain things that could really just help you scale that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. One, we really do not buy off the MLS. 99% of the properties we purchase are off market. So we have a system in place where we market to off market sellers, and we mostly text message and cold call, some marketing online that we have people reach out. And then we do have some bandit signs out in some in front of our properties that we get calls off as well. But the majority of our stuff is off market. So when we buy it, we're buying it off market without realtor fees, without all of the other things, and we're buying them right. So what happens is the way we buy our property is we use private funding, and we buy the property. We also use that private funding to rehab the property, and then we put a tenant in there. And then we refinance it back out, pull equity or pull liquidity out tax-free. Okay. Pay the investor back off. And if we make 5, 10, 15 grand on the deal, we take that money and we put it in our pocket so that we can invest it somewhere else. And then when we go to the next house, we call another investor and say, hey, I need to borrow money. And we borrow that money again. And we just do that over and over. So we take tax-free cash, put it in our pocket for us, but then we help an investor make huge returns on their money because we're doing that transaction. So every transaction, is the more we can do with them, the more money they make. And that's how I've scaled our business and what we do.
I love that. I love that. So I appreciate the insight. So let me ask you this. So, and I think that's brilliant in regards to obviously how you're scaling it. So let's say, for example, you have a $1 million property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you put like 20% down with private financing. Wonderful. Okay, now you have some equity, and basically what you're saying is at some point when that's somewhat paid down, you have some equity that you have in there. You pull that out, you refinance. Now my question, because of the market, do you feel like paying a bad price? And what I mean by this is that real estate right now prices are like 2-3 times what it normally is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But a really great interest rate. And what I was having a conversation with one of my business partners, I said, I don't know, I feel like I would rather have an okay interest rate at a great price, more so than a bad price at a great interest rate. Which would you rather prefer?
I would say a great price at a not so great interest rate. Because I think if you, number one, inflation's running rampant right now. Prices for real estate are going up. The key to it is having that property locked up. And if you have the property locked up and you have it at a great price, but maybe interest rates are going to drop again or whatever, you have that availability because of the price. But if you buy it at a really high price, but a really low interest rate, but you have to buy that on terms as far as a 5-year AM or whatever, and then you go refi that sucker in 6 years and interest rates are at 8%, then you may be underwater depending on what you bought it at, right? So even on your debt pay down, if it's not a good price, if it's a terrible price on your debt pay down, you still may be underwater come 6 years from now if interest rates are stupid high. You never know. So I would much rather buy it at a cheaper price with a worse interest rate, but as long as it is cash flow good or cash flow steady, then you can weather the storm when interest rates rise even higher.
Definitely. So let me ask you this, because you said something very important, cash flow, right? Do you optimize for cash flow more so, or do you optimize for kind of like kind of the equity, if you will? Because it's two different strategies.
Yeah, no, it's cash flow all day. Because if it's not cash flowing, it becomes what we call an alligator, and it's just eating your money, and it doesn't make any sense. So equity's great. Appreciation is absolutely wonderful, but that's not certain. What is certain is the cash is coming in every month.
Okay, because you have, PITI and so forth. What are your margins that you'd like to have that say, okay, you know what, I like these margins that help me? Because I was listening to one podcast and they said like, $300 is my margin from, out of everything, this is my net margin. Boom, this is it. This is my comfort zone. What do you feel like is your like your kind of margin that you like? Obviously, it depends on each property and things like that, but I would like to get your response.
So I shoot for $200 a door after everything net into my pocket, $200. If it's coming, if it's $200 a month, I think I'm happy on it.
So give me an example, because it's very interesting, because see, I know how people think, and they always love to think the best example, right? Oh man, this is going to be fantastic. Boom, boom, boom. Nothing's going to go wrong. This thing's going to be rented 100%, right? And I think, obviously someone that's been in the business for a long time, it's like, okay, you understand that there are certain metrics. Hey, probably an 80% retention rate, probably 20% will, you're going to always be churning, right? At some point, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be, X amount of revenue. Like there's certain metrics that we should always, plan for the worst, so if you will. So my question is like, when you're going into it, okay, you got, just like you said, 20% margin, okay, $200, right? Give me an example, Sean, of when you found a really good deal. It was like, man, this is beautiful, but the numbers didn't line up. And you're like, you know what? I have to pass because I know I'm sticking to my rules. I'm sticking to my plan. And obviously it saved you in the long run. And then give me another example of you didn't stick to your rules and then you fell through and you lost that opportunity, or obviously it just kind of turned into a bad situation.
I don't guess I have one specific one where I stuck to my rules. I guess I kind of pass on them and just forget about them. But the way, I guess what we have, I'll kind of give you what we have. We have what we call a buy box or a calculator. And when we put that property into a calculator, it gives us, okay, we are assuming a 45% management, our expense ratio, so on and so forth. And if I put that thing in my calculator and the numbers make sense, then that's kind of where that's what I do. So one that I'm trying to think of one that that I stuck to my guns. Well, I'll give you an example. All right, let me give you this one. So we had a $2.8 million condominium complex under contract. It was going to be an Airbnb on a lake here locally. Those 6 condos, they were high end, A+ class rating. We were going to Airbnb those things. So we negotiated an owner finance for that for 38 years at, I think it was a 4.25, something like that interest rate. So it was going to be a really long-term owner finance. The cash flow worked. I think our payments were going to be around $10,000 a month. And if we rented it out correctly, the numbers were going to be pretty close to being there. But with all that being said, we didn't have any room for error for maintenance or extra expense. So you're buying an A-class property with the expectation that there's not very much, deferred maintenance. And so great, we get it locked up under contract. We're going through the deal. On a deal that big, we're going to go ahead and get an appraisal to make sure appraisal values are there, and had an inspection. Inspector comes out, starts doing the inspection, and this thing's on the side of a cliff, right? And it's built on beams. It's really cool. But what we found out is that we have erosion issues where the water is actually running underneath the properties, underneath the things, and they've tried to fix it, as best as possible, but they didn't do it right. They should have done French drains and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's going to be about another $300,000 in expense to build out the erosion issue to fix it. Well, we didn't have that in our calculator, even though it was wonderful, wonderful terms. When the heck do you get a 38-year owner finance, right? It just didn't make sense. So that was one that we actually had to walk on, was because it was too tight. The risk level was just not there. One that we had that we kept was we had a 18 unit here locally, and we got it under contract extremely cheap, and we were going to wholesale it. So we were going to make like $150,000 on a wholesale deal, right? And talked about it, finally realized, what in the heck are we doing? Like, why are we wholesaling this? Keep it, And we kept it, raised rents, refinanced it, made $300,000 on refi proceeds, and still have it cash flowing today. So there's 2 different dynamics, but we followed our buy box on both of them. One, we just decided, we initially that 18 unit, we just didn't think about our buy box at that point, right? It was still in there and it still made sense. We just didn't think about it.
I love those examples. The reason why I wanted to bring this up, Sean, specifically for our audience, is because, sometimes you get down to the 5-yard line, maybe 1-yard line. You're like, you know what, this is going to be a touchdown. This is going to be it. But then you start realizing, hey, that because of the discipline, because there are certain red flags, you have to say no, you have to walk away. And that to me is probably the toughest thing. And so, Sean, kind of walk me through like you said, logically, it made sense. But obviously, people get into emotional based situations, right? We're getting emotional. Oh, I need this. This is going to be huge. This is going to be amazing. We very optimistic people, right? So how were you able to sit there and train your brain over the many years that you've been in doing this, right? To sit there and say, you know what, it's okay if we've gone this far, we've signed all the paperwork, we're this close, and then we're just going to walk away. What does that feel like? And as well as kind of walk me through the process to help you, just like you said, just, hey, I don't ever think about it. Move on to the next deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things, so for that condo project, we were out, I think, $3,000 or something for the inspection that we had to pay. So sometimes it's a little bit of a driver, even not because you want it, it's because you don't want to lose the money as well. And you're like, gosh, I've done spent this money and blah, blah, blah. But the key is what happened with that one and what happens continuously on the other ones are, honestly, that's a drop in the bucket. That's a moment in time. And if you keep doing what you're doing every day and driving, another deal is going to be there next week. So that's what really kind of helps me is just, it just doesn't matter long term. I mean, don't get caught up in the day to day instead of looking at what you can do year to year, and the amount of deals that you can find are substantial out there. You can either have a limited mindset or abundance mindset, and I choose to have the abundance.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for that clarity, man. That's brilliant. And you're exactly right. I think some people have to have that paradigm shift, if you will.
Yeah.
Say, hey, you know what? It's okay. Move on. There's going to be even a better deal out there. And then as well as sometimes what I found, one of the lessons I learned from Trump is whether you like him or not, it doesn't
Love
really
them.
matter. But yeah, but one of the biggest things is, with him acquiring the Mar-a-Lago estate, right? He's out there, and all of a sudden he acquired it for like 10 million, which is way below, asking price, whatever. And now it's like worth 100, 200 million. I don't know, but very, very good, important lessons. Now, let me ask you this, because with you being able to be where you're at, right? Acquiring the properties that you have. You were telling me before we jumped on here, obviously things that you're really passionate about. It's not just about real estate and making money and resources and so forth, because you've already been there, done that. It's really about significance, right? Achieving that. And I mentioned that in my intro here. So Sean, just kind of tell me what recently happened that you're really excited about. You're partnering up with John Maxwell, and kind of what that vision looks like for you and your company and the community.
Yeah, well, that's really cool experience for us to understand. So John Maxwell actually just came into the United States for the first time ever to change America from the inside out. And honestly, what I took from that was the change is nothing but love. Love everybody around you, care about other people. And if we do that, we will all be successful. And that was the coolest thing for me to experience. So he's come in. Tupelo is actually the very first location in Tupelo, Mississippi, in the United States where they're starting this process. And I'm one of the lucky companies that had the benefit of the very first opportunity for the Maxwell team to come in and start training businesses on that. And I think, like you and I were talking initially, if you just care about people, you'll be successful. And I think that's highly important.
So let me ask you this, and walk me through this a little bit, because I think sometimes, we have this generic caring for people, right? And it's very sad. And then we can all agree on it, but we all have our own definition of how to care for people, right? Mm-hmm. Some people look at, gender identity. That's caring for people, letting them choose. Some people disagree, and I'm just getting to political because that's just the best kind of A/B format. Some people say, hey, you know what? Give them certain rules and regulations, and then this is kind of what this is, right? So I think, to me, let me ask you this, Sean, right? What does caring for people mean to you, and what does that look like in the vision of you and your company?
Yeah. So ultimately, it's having the best interests at heart for the people that you are having conversations with. So you can have your own best interests at heart for what you want for somebody and impose those interests on them. It doesn't mean that's the best for them. That's your own opinion of what you want. So what I think needs to happen is we need to listen to other people and what they truly want, and then have those best interests in heart and not have our own selfish needs in front of it. For instance, give you an instance on what happened. The other day, we had a contract on a property. We were going to buy a property. We already had that property pre-sold, and we were going to make a pretty good hit on that property. The guy calls, and he's like, look, he said, I've been stressed out ever since I've signed this contract. He said, I've got cold feet. I want to back out. I made every opportunity to say, look, man, if we can I'll do X, Y, and Z. I'll give you an extra 40 grand for your house. I'll hire a moving company and we'll come move you out of the property. We'll do this, 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 and this. And he's like, no, you don't understand. He said, I can't deal with the stress. Initially, if I'm honest and selfishly, I was like, well, you can't do that. This is a contract. You're now affecting me and my business. Going back and after looking at it, I realized that it had nothing to do with money. It had nothing to do with what I could do for him. his stress level was so high for selling that house that he couldn't deal with the process. And so, um, you know, at a certain point, I could go after him, right? I have ramifications where I could go in and sue him for breach of contract and blah, blah, blah. But what benefit is that? What benefit is it for me going after him, right? For me to feel better about how I'm right? Is it worth it? No, it's not. And so have that best interest, and with other people when you do business. And that's just the circumstance that we had come up with us.
Yeah, because what I think is interesting is you get two different sides, right? It's, hey, a business is a dog eat dog world. You got to go in there, cut throat, and go full throttle. And then I've heard other individuals that have been very successful in business, and they say, hey, anytime I get in a deal, it's 49-51. They get 51, I get 49, even though maybe I'm bringing up most of the resources, the capital, right? Whatever it may be, whatever that deal is. And the reason why is because then, again, I always just find it interesting, right? In regards to obviously how each person really comes to different business and life, right? So let me ask you this, because you're obviously very quote unquote successful, right? By worldly renown and so forth. So at what point in your life, at what point did you say, okay, you know what? This isn't about driving to achieve more real estate, acquiring more properties, and having $1 billion under assets. It's about giving back, and like you just were talking about. At what point did you start realizing, okay, I want to switch my focus and my attention and my driving motivation?
Yeah, I was about 2.5 years in after I'd realized that that I was able to take the skill set that I have and then utilize the people that are surrounded by me or surrounded with me, my partners, and we all grow together. And I realized I had a platform. So, I come from broke to woke, or whatever you want to say. I have a story. And when I realized I actually have a story that could potentially resonate, I felt like I needed to start teaching other people that they could do exactly what I did. Because in all honesty, I'm just a redneck from Mississippi, right? I'm a high school dropout. Nothing special. There's nothing different from me than anybody else except for mindset. That's it. And if you can change your mindset, you can be successful.
I love it. I love it because, see, one of the things, I'm a big believer and a lover of what John C. Maxwell did in other countries. And one of the reasons why I love what he's done is not the concept that he's giving out. It is a matter of empowering, right? It's a concept of that's true, impact is empowering others to want to move, to produce and create, and to do it here. And obviously, like you said, you're being part of that vision. So Sean, share with me a little bit, kind of, what does that vision look like for you? Maybe other listeners as well that say, okay, I've got influence. I got several resources, $1 million, $2 million business. I've got a community. I've got things, right? I've got these assets. Mm-hmm. How do I be part of this vision? Because you're exactly right. How do we change it from the inside out?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing that I did was I created a course for people to be able to start that process. And at a certain point, there's a lot of time and effort that's spent into it. So, you still have to make money, you have to survive, but I created that course to help people get started. And I'm hoping that throughout that, and then throughout my own business ventures that I've got going on, that I can do those key indicators that John Maxwell will tell us about, which is, the key things: care about people, influence people, positive mindset, so on and so forth. And the things that I've learned, every person that I touch, I just give those nuggets, man. Give those nuggets, because not everybody listens to John Maxwell. Not everybody listens to Robert Kiyosaki. Not everybody listens to the people that I listen to that are influencers in my life. So if I can grab key nuggets and just put them into those people and give value, give benefit, I think that's how I'm going to help influence.
I love it, because you got a good point in that regard. Because see, one thing that I was listening to, I think it was Trey Gowdy, and he did a convocation at Liberty, and I was listening to, and I love what he said, because it's not the impact. Sometimes we think about, hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of people, right? That's what we're going to do, and that's fine. But he said, just holistically go through life and impact that one person at the grocery store, impact
Yeah.
the one, two people at the whatever, right? And the
Yeah.
thing is that sometimes we go through life trying to think we're going to impact millions, but we lose the opportunity to impact that one at 100%.
Have you heard of the starfish thrower?
No. Oh, yes, I have. Love that. Love
Okay.
that story.
That's perfect. That keys into exactly what we're talking about. The guy's out there on the beach and he's picking up, there's thousands of starfish out there, and he's picking up one starfish, throwing it in the water. He pick up another starfish and throw it in the water. And the person comes up to him, "What are you doing?" He said, I'm saving the starfish. I'm throwing starfish back into the ocean. The ocean washed them up. Well, that's absolutely stupid. You look at all these starfish. You're not going to be able to save. It's not that relevant. And he picked up a starfish and he said, "It's the most relevant to this one right now." And he throws him back. Man, that gives you chill bumps, matters
Every
to that
time.
one person.
Every time. I love it. I love it. So let's kind of dive into, your system, your course a little bit, right? To teach and train this. Tell us a little bit about that, kind of what they should expect, and why they should obviously invest into it.
Yeah. So, I created the course for people that really didn't know where to start or what to do. But also I've got in there where even if you're in the middle of your real estate career, but you want to understand how to market, get better at negotiating, what this course is going to do is it can take you from the beginning on how to write a contract, how to find deals, how to market to those deals, how to negotiate those deals, and how to close them. So it's start to finish. It's modules. It's virtual. Well, there's multiple different avenues that you could do, but it's cheap. I didn't want to do this crazy $5,000 course thing. I put it together so it's inexpensive for you to do. You can do it at your own time. But then we also get you set up on our Facebook page for 2 months, where we have one-on-one. So every week, today we have a call on Thursdays, every Thursday, and we discuss, how to make your business more successful, how to find the right deal. And what it'll do is ultimately, if you're scaling, what you become is a marketing company. You're a marketing company marketing to off-market properties, and you're a real estate company on the back end, because the key to real estate is the deal, finding the deal. You make the money at the purchase of the deal. So if you don't have those, you really don't have a real estate business. You have a one-off business, right? You have every once in a while you find a deal. Every once in a while you can buy a halfway decent deal on the market. But you can really become good finding off-market deals. And there are a whole lot more of those than there are on-market deals.
How do you, Sean, do you focus on specific states more so than others? Because I've heard, some people focus a little bit more on red states than blue. But I was just curious, what is your perspective in that regard?
Yeah. So we focus on the Southeast. So we like the Southeast region. Some of that is because I'm sure you can tell, I don't notice it as much anymore, but I have a Southern twang to my my speaking. So honestly, I want to be able to relate to people as well. And when I call, somebody up north, either they like it or they don't. And so I don't know. I mean, if it's a larger buy and hold, I want to kind of keep it, or if it's buy and hold, I want to kind of keep it close to me. And then, we just market to the Southeast region. I like the Southeast region. It's harder to find, for me, it's harder to find deals in California than it is in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. So, and what I find interesting about that, because like you said, there's certain reasons why, right? Because obviously your probably conversions are better, and you relate and so forth. And obviously the negotiating the deals. So, and that does make sense. But what I love about that is that you really focus on that specific area. Now, one of the things that I've learned from building a business is building constraints in your life, right? So being able to build $11 million business, you can't do everything. You can't have 1,000 hats. Now you have to delegate certain responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And so what I like to ask is, having 11 million under assets, you had to delegate a lot of responsibility. You had certain partners that you'd be able to, higher level tasks. What was that process like? And what were some of the biggest tasks that you delegated um, to so you could focus on maybe the top 4% of things that produce the biggest results for you, Sean?
Mm. The process was as we grew. So we would bring someone in. Our first hire was Ashley. Ashley now is pretty much, she pretty much runs a lot of the commercial side and on the other side now, because what happened was as we grew as a company, finding deals, we would hire out and Ashley would take control of that. And then as we grew some more, we would hire an acquisitions specialist to start calling and doing the acquisitions themselves, which was probably one of my hardest things to let go of, because I love the art of the deal. I love making the deals. And so that was one. And then growing into, now a property management company has to be built, because we're going to have to now manage these assets, and it's easier to manage them in-house than it is trying to manage a property management company. And then just new hires. And so as the business grew, we just added people in key spots to handle things for the company. Like I said, I think my biggest one was letting go of the negotiation side of the deal. Relying on someone else to make a call on what we should offer. I think that was one thing that it was hard for me initially, but now it's actually rewarding to see people make those kind of calls. It's really cool.
See, and that's what's so interesting, because delegating those high level tasks, right? Even though sometimes when you're starting out or whatever, and one of the reasons why I want to bring this up is because, see, my audience, if you guys have a lot of capital and you deploy it and basically give it to Sean, and then Sean's basically, you're leveraging your capital to him, but he's going out there doing all the heavy lifting, so you don't have to. All you have to focus on is on your business. To me, that's the most strategic approach, right? I've got a lot of different, network where that has happened, and what I find so interesting is that you even thinking about that, right? You can make another 11, 12% on your return, because that's what Sean was just explaining. But obviously your team basically produces all that without having to build it from the ground up like you did, right? I mean, gracious. Now, going to the property manager side, did you acquire a company and already have the infrastructure, or did you build that from the ground up alongside your company?
Yeah, it was built out. My business partners built that out on their side. So I'm not owner. I do not own that. My partners actually had, I want to say 60 doors before we partnered. And then I think I had 28 doors or so, something like that, when we all partnered together. And so because they had doors of their own, and then we were consistently adding doors into our holdings company, it just made sense for them to build that out. And as they did that, I was continuing to grow the simple home exits. And then we were continuing to acquire property. So yeah, no, it was built out from the ground up. It's been a lot of learning, in that process as well. But again, that comes back to having good business partners that have the same type of mindset you do, which is we're all going in one direction.
That makes perfect. Now, let me ask you this. Where can our audience?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think, did you ask where could your audience find me?
Where can our audience reach out to?
Yeah. So they can reach out to me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Sean O'Rourke. I do a lot on TikTok and Instagram. So on Instagram, I'm at bearded_investor. And then TikTok, I'm at bearded_investor Sean. And then also, if they're interested in the course The course is highperformanceedu.com. You can go check that out. And then we have a lot of stuff there too. So we have discounts. So if you're already on PropStream or property places to find property, we have discount codes for that. You can save money on skip tracing, so on and so forth. So that stuff's in there too. And that's free, even if you don't do a course, right? Go save some money. But I would say the biggest thing is just kind of message me, reach out to me. You can email me at Sean, SEAN at simplehomeexits.com. You can get me that way as well.
And guys, those links will be in the description below. So make sure you just, kind of be part of his community, be able to just take advantage of the resources that he's been able to build from the ground up so you don't have to. And Sean, again, I just want to say thank you personally from just bringing an incredible amount of insight. I mean, really diving deep into kind of the infrastructure, your system, your processes, your kind of red flags that you should be aware of, and obviously being able to have that discipline and walk away from deals. And then also just the drive that you have, the significance that you really want to achieve in the United States here, as well as in your community. I just think that's very honorable. And guys, those links will be in the description below. So make sure you reach out to him, make sure you communicate with him. Now, Sean, before we let you go fully, is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, care about people and not about profit. That's the wisdom. And stay consistent. If you'll stay consistent, you'll win.
Awesome. And guys, that is Sean O'Rourke. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can.